Imagine standing at the edge of your life, looking back at all that you've done and all that you haven't, the dreams pursued and the ones abandoned, the challenges conquered and the ones you ran from, the person you became and the person you could have been. What separates these two versions of yourself? It's not talent, it's not luck, it's not even opportunity, it's time, or more specifically, what you chose to do with it. Welcome to the Time Revolution. I'm here today to share something that might change the trajectory of your entire life, not through some magic formula or secret hack, but through a fundamental shift in how you view the most precious resource you'll ever possess. Before we begin this journey together, I want to explain the structure we'll be following. This isn't your typical beginning, middle, end narrative. Instead, we'll be using what I call a spiral structure. We'll start with our central theme, the revolutionary power of time management and overcoming laziness, and then we'll expand outward in increasingly deeper layers, examining different facets of this concept before converging back to our core message at the end. This approach allows us to build momentum and understanding as we progress, much like how real personal transformation works. Let me ask you a question that might make you uncomfortable. What would you do if you knew you had exactly 1 year left to live? Would you spend it scrolling through social media, watching TV shows you don't even enjoy, putting off your dreams for someday? Or would you suddenly find the urgency, focus, and discipline to pursue what truly matters? Here's the truth that most people never fully grasp. We're all dying. Every single day, our remaining time decreases. The only difference is that most of us live with the illusion that we have endless tomorrows, and this illusion is the breeding ground for life's most insidious disease, laziness. Today, I'm going to show you how to cure this disease once and for all. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, the same 168 hours in a week, the same 8,560 hours in a year. Time is the great equalizer. It doesn't discriminate based on wealth, status, or background. It flows equally for everyone. But here's what separates those who achieve greatness from those who don't: their relationship with time. Arnold Schwarzenegger once said, "You can't climb the ladder of success with your hands in your pockets." What he meant was that success requires action, and action requires time. Every moment you spend procrastinating is a moment you'll never get back. Let me share a story that changed my perspective forever. There was a successful entrepreneur who charged $5,000 for a 1-hour consultation. One day, a client asked him, "Why do you charge so much for just an hour of your time?" The entrepreneur replied, "I'm not charging for an hour of my time. I'm charging for the 20 years it took me to learn what I can teach you in that hour." This story illustrates a profound truth. Time isn't just about quantity. It's about what you put into that time. The value of your time increases exponentially when you invest it wisely. Consider this. When you're 20, you think you have endless time ahead of you. By 30, you start to feel the pressure of unfulfilled dreams. By 40, you begin to calculate how many years you have left to achieve your goals. By 50, you wonder where all that time went. And by 80, you either look back with pride at how you spent your time, or with regret at how you wasted it. Which scenario would you prefer? Let's do a quick exercise together. Take a moment to mentally catalog how you spent your time over the past week. How many hours did you spend on activities that moved you closer to your goals? How many hours did you waste on mindless activities? Be brutally honest with yourself. Most people, if they're truly honest, will admit that they waste at least 2 to 3 hours every day. That's over 1,000 hours per year. Imagine what you could accomplish with an extra 1,000 focused hours per year. You could learn a new language, write a book, start a business, transform your physical health, or master a new skill. Time is not just money, it's your life, and laziness is the thief that steals it from you one moment at a time. Let's talk about laziness, not as a character flaw, but as a psychological condition that affects nearly everyone to some degree. Laziness isn't simply the desire to rest or relax. Those are natural and necessary human needs. True laziness is the habit of avoiding necessary action despite having the capacity to act. It's the gap between knowing what needs to be done and actually doing it. Dr. Piers Steele, one of the world's foremost researchers on procrastination, defines it as voluntarily delaying an intended course of action despite expecting to be worse off for the delay. In other words, it's self-sabotage. But why do we do this to ourselves? Research points to several factors. First, there's the issue of time perception. Studies show that we tend to view our future selves as strangers. When you procrastinate, you're essentially saying, I don't want to do this difficult task now, so I'll let that stranger, my future self, deal with it instead. This psychological distance makes it easier to postpone important actions. Second, there's the matter of immediate gratification versus delayed reward. Our brains are wired to prefer immediate rewards over future benefits, even when the future benefits are much greater. This is why it's easier to watch Netflix now than to work on a project that might boost your career in 6 months. Third, there's fear. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of the unknown. Sometimes laziness is just fear wearing a convincing disguise. I once knew a talented writer who dreamed of publishing a novel. For years he talked about his book idea, claiming he was developing the concept. But the truth was, he never wrote a single page. When I finally confronted him about it, he admitted, "What if I pour my heart into this book and it's terrible? What if I discover I'm not the writer I thought I was? It's safer to have potential than to fail." His story reveals the heart of laziness. It's often a protective mechanism against the pain of disappointment, but this protection comes at an enormous cost, the loss of what could have been. The good news is that laziness isn't a permanent condition. It's a habit, and like any habit, it can be broken. Consider the story of Jerry Seinfeld, one of the most successful comedians of all time. When asked about his method for becoming a better comedian, he shared his "don't break the chain" technique. Every day that he wrote jokes, he would mark an X on a calendar. His goal was simple: don't break the chain of X's. This simple commitment to daily action, regardless of motivation or mood, helped him overcome laziness and develop extraordinary discipline. This brings us to a crucial understanding. Motivation is unreliable, but discipline is unstoppable. There's a dangerous myth in our culture that you need to feel motivated to take action. This is one of the most destructive beliefs when it comes to personal achievement. Motivation is an emotion, and like all emotions, it fluctuates. Some days you'll feel inspired and energetic. Other days you'll feel drained and disinterested. If you rely on motivation to drive your actions, you'll make progress only on your good days. Discipline, on the other hand, is a decision. It's the commitment to take action, regardless of how you feel. It's what gets you out of bed for an early morning workout when every fiber of your being wants to stay under the covers. It's what keeps you working on your business when Netflix is calling your name. It's what propels you forward when motivation has abandoned you. Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL and leadership expert, has a simple response when asked how he maintains discipline. Discipline equals freedom. What he means is that by imposing discipline on yourself, you ultimately gain freedom. Freedom from regret, freedom from underachievement, freedom from the tyranny of your weaker self. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't wait until you feel motivated to do it. You don't stand in front of the mirror giving yourself a pep talk about dental hygiene. You just do it because it's a disciplined habit. The key to overcoming laziness is to approach your most important tasks with the same automatic discipline. Here's a powerful truth. Action often precedes motivation, not the other way around. When you force yourself to take action, even when you don't feel like it, motivation often follows. This is what psychologists call the do-feel cycle, as opposed to the feel-do cycle that most people get trapped in. Let me share a personal example. Years ago, I committed to writing 1,000 words every morning. At first, it was agonizing. I'd stare at the blank page feeling completely unmotivated and convinced I had nothing valuable to say, but I'd force myself to start typing anyway. Almost without fail, after about 15 minutes of forced writing, something would shift. Ideas would begin flowing, and I'd find myself genuinely engaged in the process. By showing up and starting, regardless of how I felt, I activated the motivation that wasn't there initially. This pattern applies to virtually any goal. Don't want to exercise? Put on your workout clothes and go to the gym anyway. Your body will often take over once you're there. Don't feel like studying? Open the book and commit to reading just one page. Frequently, you'll find yourself continuing beyond that page once you've started. The ancient philosopher Aristotle understood this principle when he said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. Your life is shaped not by your feelings, but by your actions, and disciplined actions, performed consistently over time, create extraordinary results. Here's an exercise that can help you develop discipline. Identify one important task that you've been procrastinating on. Commit to working on it for just 5 minutes today. That's all, just 5 minutes. This tiny commitment bypasses the brain's resistance to large, intimidating tasks. Once you've completed your 5 minutes, you can stop if you want to, but you'll often find yourself continuing, because starting is almost always the hardest part. Remember, motivation is what gets you started, but discipline is what keeps you going when motivation fades, and it will fade. That's not a failure on your part, it's simply human nature. The solution isn't to wait for motivation to return, but to continue taking action in its absence. Now that we understand the power of discipline over motivation, let's talk about where to direct that discipline toward goals that truly matter. Many people fail not because they lack effort, but because they aim too low. They set goals that don't excite them, that don't scare them, that don't force them to become more than they currently are. This is a recipe for mediocrity. As Michelangelo said, the greater danger for most of us lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but in setting our aim too low and achieving our mark. Your goals should make you slightly uncomfortable. They should exist just beyond what you believe is possible for yourself. Why? Because goals that exist within your comfort zone won't require you to grow, and growth is the ultimate purpose of any worthwhile goal. Think about it. When you're completely comfortable, you're not learning, you're not improving, and you're not evolving. Comfort is the enemy of progress. This is why the most successful people in any field continuously set goals that push them beyond their current capabilities. Let me tell you about Sarah, a client of mine who dreamed of starting her own business, but was paralyzed by fear and self-doubt. For years, she worked at a job she hated, telling herself that entrepreneurship was too risky and that she didn't have what it takes. When we began working together, I challenged her to set an audacious goal, launch her business within 6 months, and generate enough revenue to replace her current income within 1 year. This goal terrified her, which is exactly why it was perfect. The interesting thing about audacious goals is that they trigger a psychological phenomenon known as productive anxiety. This is a level of stress that doesn't paralyze you, but actually enhances your performance. It forces your brain to find creative solutions, to work harder, and to develop new capabilities. Sarah's goal created exactly this kind of productive anxiety. It scared her, but it also excited her in a way that no goal had before. This emotional intensity gave her the energy to overcome her natural laziness and take consistent action, even on days when she didn't feel like it. Within 4 months, not 6, she had launched her business. Within 10 months, not 12, she had replaced her income. And 2 years later, her company was generating 7 figures. The audacious goal had forced her to become more than she believed possible. Now, I'm not suggesting you quit your job tomorrow without a plan. Audacious doesn't mean reckless. What I am suggesting is that you set goals that make your heart beat faster when you think about them. Goals that require you to become a different person to achieve them. Here's an exercise to help you set truly compelling goals. Write down what you think you could realistically accomplish in the next 3 years if everything goes well. Now, double it. That's your goal. This simple adjustment forces you to think beyond your self-imposed limitations and consider possibilities you might otherwise dismiss. Remember, comfort is the enemy of growth, and growth is the ultimate aim of any worthwhile life. Set goals that scare you, and you'll find the discipline to overcome laziness, because the alternative, not becoming the person you know you could be, will scare you even more. Now that we've established the importance of discipline and setting compelling goals, let's discuss specific strategies to overcome procrastination, the practical manifestation of laziness. First, let's talk about the 5-second rule developed by Mel Robbins. The concept is simple but powerful. When you feel the impulse to do something productive, count backward from 5 and then move physically. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. This technique short-circuits the brain's tendency to overthink and allows you to act before your mind talks you out of it. The science behind this is fascinating. When you count backward, you engage your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and focus. This temporarily interrupts the habitual patterns in your basal ganglia, the part of your brain that runs your automatic behaviors, including procrastination. By the time you reach 1, you've created a window of opportunity to take action before your resistance kicks in. I've seen this technique transform lives. One of my clients, Michael, used the 5-second rule to overcome his morning procrastination. Every day for years, he would hit the snooze button repeatedly, starting his day rushed and stressed. Using the 5-second rule, he trained himself to count backward when his alarm went off and then immediately get out of bed. Within a week, this simple habit had reclaimed over an hour of his morning time he now uses for exercise and planning his day. Another powerful strategy is what productivity experts call eating the frog. This vivid phrase comes from Mark Twain, who said, "If the first thing you do in the morning is eat a live frog, nothing worse can happen for the rest of the day." Your frog is your most challenging, most important task, the one you're most likely to procrastinate on. By tackling it first, you build momentum that carries through the rest of your day. This approach works because willpower is typically highest in the morning and diminishes throughout the day, a phenomenon psychologists call ego depletion. By using your strongest willpower on your most difficult task, you maximize your productivity and minimize the chance of procrastination. A third strategy is environment design. Your physical space profoundly influences your behavior. A cluttered, disorganized environment drains your cognitive resources and makes procrastination more likely. By contrast, a clean, organized space reduces mental friction and makes productive action easier. Consider the story of John, a graduate student struggling to complete his dissertation. Despite his best intentions, he found himself procrastinating daily. When we analyzed his work environment, the problem became clear. His desk faced a window with a view of the campus quad, his phone was always within reach, and his space was cluttered with unrelated papers and books. We redesigned his environment, moving his desk to face a blank wall, creating a phone box where his phone stayed during work sessions, and clearing everything unrelated to his dissertation from his workspace. These simple changes reduced the cognitive load required to focus, making it easier for his brain to engage with the challenging work of writing. The fourth strategy involves breaking tasks into ridiculously small steps. Often, procrastination stems from feeling overwhelmed by the size or complexity of a task. By breaking it down into tiny, manageable actions, you reduce the psychological resistance to starting. For example, instead of write report, break it down to 1, create document and save it, 2, write the title, 3, list the main sections, 4, write 3 sentences for the introduction, and so on. Each of these microtasks feels achievable, allowing you to build momentum through small wins. This approach works because of a psychological principle called the Zeigarnik effect, which states that unfinished tasks create mental tension that seeks resolution. By starting a task, you create this tension, which then motivates you to complete it. The smaller the initial step, the easier it is to start and trigger this effect. The fifth strategy is the 2-minute rule, popularized by productivity expert David Allen. If a task takes less than 2 minutes to complete, do it immediately rather than scheduling it for later. This prevents the accumulation of small tasks that collectively create a sense of overwhelm and inertia. Finally, consider the power of accountability. When your only accountability is to yourself, it's easy to let yourself off the hook. By contrast, external accountability dramatically increases follow-through. This could involve a workout partner who expects you at the gym, a writing group that reviews your weekly output, or a coach who holds you to your commitments. Studies show that people are 65% more likely to complete a goal if they commit to someone else, and this increases to 95% if they have specific accountability appointments with that person. The social cost of letting someone else down is often more motivating than the personal cost of letting yourself down. Implement these strategies, and you'll find yourself taking action even when your motivation is low, the essence of true discipline. We've discussed how your physical environment affects productivity, but let's expand this concept further, because your environment encompasses far more than just your physical space. It includes the people you spend time with, the information you consume, and the culture you immerse yourself in. Jim Rohn famously said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." This insight reflects a profound truth about human psychology. We unconsciously adopt the attitudes, behaviors, and expectations of those around us. Consider a study conducted at the University of Framingham that followed over 12,000 people for 32 years. The researchers found that if your friend becomes obese, your chances of becoming obese increase by 57%. If your friend's friend becomes obese, someone you may not even know, your chances still increase by 20%. This social contagion effect has been documented with everything from smoking habits to happiness levels. The implications of financial behaviors. If you surround yourself with lazy, unmotivated people who settle for mediocrity, you'll likely do the same. But if you surround yourself with disciplined, ambitious individuals who consistently push their limits, you'll naturally elevate your own standards. Let me share a personal example. When I first started in my industry, I joined a mastermind group of entrepreneurs who were all earning at least 10 times what I was making at the time. Being the small fish in this group was intimidating at first, but something remarkable happened. My income tripled within a year. Not because they gave me money or direct opportunities, but because my definition of normal changed. What I had previously considered exceptional became my new baseline. Your environment also includes the information you consume, the books you read, the podcasts you listen to, the social media accounts you follow. All of these inputs shape your thinking and, by extension, your actions. In a world of infinite content, consumption is a zero-sum game. Every minute you spend consuming low-value information is a minute you can't spend consuming high-value information. This creates an opportunity cost that most people never calculate. For instance, the average American spends over 2 hours per day on social media. That's over 700 hours per year, the equivalent of 30 full days. Imagine if even half of that time were redirected to reading books, learning skills, or building something of value. The compound effect over years would be staggering. I challenge you to conduct an information audit. For 1 week, track every piece of content you consume and categorize it as either high value, contributes to your goals and growth, or low value, pure entertainment or distraction. Most people are shocked to discover that over 80% of their information diet falls into the low value category. Now, I'm not suggesting you eliminate all entertainment. Mental breaks are necessary. What I am suggesting is intentionality. Choose your inputs deliberately rather than defaulting to whatever is most accessible or stimulating in the moment. This extends to the culture you participate in as well. We live in a culture that often celebrates comfort, immediate gratification, and the path of least resistance, all enemies of discipline and significant achievement. To counter this influence, you must deliberately create a personal culture that values different things: effort, delayed gratification, and continuous improvement. One effective way to do this is through rituals and routines that reinforce your values. For example, many successful people maintain morning routines that include physical exercise, reading, meditation, and planning, activities that prime their minds for productivity and focus before the demands of the day begin. These routines aren't just about the activities themselves, they're about reinforcing an identity. Each time you choose the harder, more disciplined path, you're telling yourself, "This is who I am, someone who does what needs to be done regardless of how I feel in the moment." Over time, these small choices compound into an environment, both external and internal, that makes discipline the default rather than the exception. When this happens, overcoming laziness is no longer a daily struggle, but simply the natural expression of who you've become. Now let's address one of the most significant barriers to action: the fear of failure. This fear is often at the root of procrastination and laziness. We avoid tasks not because we're inherently lazy, but because we're afraid of doing them poorly. But here's a perspective shift that can transform your relationship with failure. Failure isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. It's not something to be avoided, it's something to be embraced as an essential part of any meaningful growth process. Think about how a baby learns to walk. The average baby falls approximately 2,000 times before walking proficiently. Imagine if after the third or fourth fall, the baby concluded, "This walking thing isn't for me, I'm clearly not cut out for it." Sounds absurd, right? Yet this is precisely how many adults approach new challenges. J.K. Rowling's manuscript for Harry Potter was rejected by 12 publishers before being accepted. Thomas Edison made over 1,000 unsuccessful attempts before inventing the light bulb. When asked about his failures, Edison famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." These examples illustrate a crucial truth. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of success. It's feedback, not a final verdict on your capabilities or worth. Let me share a story about Michael Jordan, widely considered the greatest basketball player of all time. In a famous Nike commercial, Jordan said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times, I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." Jordan understood that his willingness to risk failure repeatedly was precisely what allowed him to achieve unprecedented success. Each failure provided data that he could use to improve. This perspective transforms failure from something to be feared into something to be valued. When you see failure as data rather than drama, you remove the emotional sting that causes avoidance and procrastination. Here's a practical exercise to develop this mindset. Deliberately seek opportunities for low-stakes failure. For example, if you're learning a new language, commit to having a conversation with a native speaker, even though you know you'll make mistakes. If you're developing a business idea, share it with potential customers before it's fully refined to get early feedback. These experiences build your failure resilience, your ability to take action despite the possibility, or even likelihood, of initial failure. This resilience is what allows you to overcome the paralysis of perfectionism, one of laziness's most convincing disguises. Remember, the master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried. Embracing failure doesn't mean celebrating mediocrity. It means recognizing that the path to excellence is paved with instructive mistakes. As we spiral deeper into our exploration of overcoming laziness, let's discuss another critical attribute: adaptability. In a rapidly changing world, the ability to adapt is not just an advantage, it's a necessity. Charles Darwin observed, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, it is the one most adaptable to change." This principle applies not just to biological evolution, but to personal evolution as well. Many people become paralyzed by change. They develop systems and routines that work for them in one context, but when circumstances shift, as they inevitably do, these people cling to their old methods rather than adapting to new realities. This resistance to change often manifests as a form of laziness. It's easier to keep doing what you've always done, even when it's no longer effective. True discipline includes the discipline to change, to release old habits and develop new ones when necessary. This requires mental flexibility and a willingness to step outside your comfort zone repeatedly throughout your life. Consider the story of Kodak, once the dominant leader in photography. When digital technology emerged, Kodak's leadership clung to their existing business model, failing to adapt to the changing landscape. Despite actually inventing the first digital camera, they couldn't break free from their attachment to film photography. This inability to adapt led to the company's bankruptcy in 2012. On a personal level, we see similar patterns. People who were once highly successful become complacent, continuing to apply yesterday's solutions to today's problems. Their past success becomes the very thing that prevents their future growth. Adaptability requires what psychologists call a growth mindset, the belief that your abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. This contrasts with a fixed mindset, which sees abilities as static traits that cannot be significantly changed. People with a growth mindset embrace challenges, persist in the face of setbacks, learn from criticism, and find inspiration in the success of others. They understand that effort is the path to mastery, and that setbacks are temporary. This mindset naturally leads to greater adaptability because it views change not as a threat, but as an opportunity for growth. How do you develop a growth mindset? Start by becoming aware of your inner dialogue. When you encounter a challenge, do you think, "I'm not good at this," or do you think, "I'm not good at this yet"? That simple addition of "yet" transforms a fixed statement into a growth-oriented one. Next, celebrate the process rather than just the outcome. Instead of focusing solely on results, which are often outside your control, focus on the effort, strategies, and progress you're making, which are within your control. This shift makes you more resilient in the face of setbacks and more willing to persist through the learning curve that comes with any adaptation. Finally, seek out new experiences deliberately. Neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, is enhanced when you expose yourself to novel situations. This doesn't have to be dramatic. Even taking a new route to work or learning a basic skill in an unfamiliar domain can stimulate neuroplasticity and enhance your overall adaptability. Remember, in a world of constant change, the most dangerous phrase is, "We've always done it this way." Adaptability isn't just about surviving disruption, it's about thriving because of it. As we spiral back to our central theme, let's reflect on what we've discovered. We've explored the true value of time, the nature of laziness, the power of discipline over motivation, the importance of audacious goals, practical strategies to beat procrastination, the influence of environment, the necessity of embracing failure, and the value of adaptability. All of these elements converge toward a single, powerful truth. Your life, the only one you'll ever have, is built one decision, one action, one day at a time. Legacy isn't just what you leave behind when you're gone. It's what you build with each moment you're alive. It's the accumulation of all your choices, both big and small. And the greatest enemy of a meaningful legacy is not lack of talent, opportunity, or luck. It's the quiet thief of laziness that steals your moments one procrastination at a time. Steve Jobs once said, "Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do." But love alone isn't enough. Love must be paired with discipline, the willingness to show up and do the work even when the initial excitement has faded. This disciplined love that persists through difficulty, boredom, and uncertainty, is what ultimately creates not just significant achievements, but personal transformation. Because the truth is, the greatest benefit of overcoming laziness isn't what you accomplish, it's who you become in the process. When you commit to daily discipline, you develop capabilities that extend far beyond your specific goals. You become someone who can be counted on by yourself and others. You develop resilience that serves you in every area of life. You build confidence that comes not from positive thinking, but from a track record of keeping promises to yourself. 2. And perhaps most importantly, you experience the deep satisfaction that comes from living intentionally rather than reactively, from creating your life rather than merely consuming it. Let me leave you with this. Imagine yourself 1 year from now. You can arrive at that future as essentially the same person you are today, having spent another year in the comfortable patterns of procrastination and unrealized potential. Or you can arrive as someone different, someone who has been forged through daily disciplines, who has faced fears, embraced failures, and consistently chosen action over avoidance. The choice is yours, and you're making it right now, not through declarations of what you'll do someday, but through what you choose to do today, tomorrow, and the day after that. If you're ready to make that choice, to declare war on laziness and claim the life that's waiting for you beyond your comfort zone, then I invite you to take one specific action today. Not tomorrow, not when you feel more motivated, not when circumstances are perfect, but today. Choose one goal that truly matters to you. Break it down into the smallest possible first step. Then use the 5-second rule to take that step before this day ends. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. This single action won't transform your life instantly, but it will put you on a different trajectory. One degree of change that, over time, will lead you to a completely different destination. Remember, time will pass regardless of how you use it. The question is not whether you'll reach the end of your life. You will. The question is what you'll be able to see when you look back at the path you've traveled. Will you see a path of least resistance, paved with some days that never came and potential that remained forever unrealized? Or will you see a path of purposeful struggle, marked by challenges embraced, fears overcome, and a life fully lived? The choice, as always, is yours, and you're making it right now. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you found value in this exploration, please like this video, subscribe for more content, and share your thoughts and commitments in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to begin their own revolution against laziness. Until next time, remember, your time is finite. Your potential is not. Choose wisely.